Hi there, welcome to my kitchen. What's for dinner tonight? Well, quarantine meal for tonight. We're doing a fresh pasta. We've got meatballs, both with beef and Beyond Beef. We're going to do both. Beyond Beef will not be plant-based because it will have eggs and cheese in it. And then also we're going to make a brown butter sauce with a little broccoli and mushrooms. And then we'll toss the pasta in that. We'll bake off the meatballs. And that's going to be dinner tonight. So the first thing that we're going to make is our pasta dough. I like to use a digital scale when I'm measuring out my pasta dough. This is 2.5 cups of flour, but it's also 12.5 ounces. I like to do by weight. That way I don't overportion my flour. The other things we have a little sea salt. I've got some eggs here. And then I've got a little tablespoon of olive oil. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flour and I'm going to add the salt into it. And I'm going to mix that up. And then I'm going to make a well in the middle. And I'm going to pour my eggs. Now when I'm cracking eggs, if I have to separate eggs out, then for the egg whites and the egg yolks, now what I do is I just tap it on the tabletop like that. And then I can open it up. And if I need to separate it out, the yolks from the whites, I can do that. But in this case, I'm not going to because I need both. All right, so then we're going to break the eggs in the middle. We're going to get our hands into here and get it all mixed up. I've got a tablespoon of olive oil. I'm going to add that in. Now I get this into a rough dough, and then I'm going to put it out on the tabletop and I'll work it. So if you have rings or anything like that, you might want to take them off because it tends to get a lot of the flour gets caught up in the rings. All right. So I weighed this all out. I'm using the eggs that it called for, but sometimes you might need a little more liquid or you might need less. It depends on the time of year. When we have, in the wintertime, when there's less humidity in the air, then that's when your flour is going to be, it's going to be drier and it'll suck up more moisture. Whereas in the summertime, it'll have more moisture in it and you may not need to add as much. So, just need to work this together on your counter. We're kneading it. And basically just want to get a nice, smooth dough that's a uniform color. And you can see how it's all pulling together. I just brush my hands together. I did wash my hands before we started all this. Had my dog trying to go outside there. Probably be barking shortly. So we gather all this together. Nice smooth dough. You don't really need, I had a little extra water here in case I needed it, but I'm not going to need that. So I pretty much got everything where it's all mixed together. And now I'm going to take this dough, form it into a little ball here. Got a little plastic wrap. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to let that rest for about 10 minutes. So we're going to clean this up a little bit, then we're going to make the meatballs. All right, so the next step, we're going to make the vegetarian meatballs. We've got Beyond Beef, we've got a little breadcrumbs here. I've got some shredded parmesan, got oregano, parsley, a little sea salt. I've got some melted butter, and I've got my chopped garlic there. So for the garlic, I love fresh garlic. You can buy it canned, but I love the fresh garlic, so I always buy the cloves. So I'll take the cloves, and then I just put them into here, roll it, and I've got my clean garlic. And then for mincing it, I like to use the microplane, and I'll just put that on here. It's not going to hurt your fingers. And just to get it out, go ahead and you knock it on your board, and I got my garlic there. So we're going to add all these ingredients into our bowl. So we've got the Beyond Beef. We've got the breadcrumbs. I've got my cheese. I'm going to put the rest of our ingredients in here. I'm going to hold off on adding the parsley and the oregano till the end. And then I've got some eggs in there. And then we're going to lift this up. We're going to mix it. At the very end, I'm going to add the butter, but let's get it mixed right now. So I'm going to add, I've got all the rest of the ingredients in here. I'm going to add some chopped oregano and a little chopped parsley. Add that in just at the end. And we're going to let this mix just for a second to get it all incorporated. I have a sheet tray here that I've sprayed, and I'm going to scoop the meatballs onto here. And I've got the oven set at 375 degrees. And I'm going to put the meatballs in there and let them cook for probably about 20 minutes. And we'll get them going to the beef meatballs. We'll cook both of them to about 160 degrees. And then we'll hold them warm, and we'll have the rest of the meal. So I'm going to scoop these out, we'll get them in the oven, and the next step is going to be making our pasta. All right, so we've let our pasta rest. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into four segments. And what I like to do is I'll go ahead and let them flatten these out a little bit. So if you don't have a pasta roller, you can roll the dough out by hand. But you know what? I've got a pasta roller. So I'm going to roll it out with the pasta roller. A little bit of flour onto here. Flatten it out just a little bit. Have my pasta roller on the largest setting. And I'm going to feed the dough through. All right. Feed it through one time. I do an envelope fold. I'm going to feed it back through. Put just a little bit of flour on the outside so it doesn't stick. All right. We're going to do an envelope fold again. All right, so I've got my pasta. I rolled it 3 times. I'm going to make it a 4th time, and I'm going to get it to where this is just about the width of my roller. and I'm going to feed it through. Now I'm going to move this to the next setting. Let's do just a tiny bit of flour on here. I don't want to add too much because this dough is already a nice consistency. So I have it on the second setting, one time through there. I've got it up to the third one. Now if you have an electric pasta roller that fits on the KitchenAid, you can use that. It works quite well. You just don't roll it as thin as what I'll do this, because the electric ones tend to be more efficient with how they roll. So I'm on the fifth setting now. So I've got the pasta going through. Now this is going to tend to get a little bit longer, so what I like to do is I'll fold my dough, the end of the dough back up on here, and I make a little belt. That way I'm not going to be having to stretch my arms out too far. All right. So we got that through. That's a number 6. We're going to try a 7 on this one and see where it goes. So what I like to do is, yeah, that'll be great. All right. So, got my pasta through here, all the way around. So we've got the dough here. Going to cut it into some lengths, just so it's easier to work with. All right, so I'm going to get all the dough rolled, and what I'll do is I'm going to take my cutting board, dry it off a little bit here. I'm going to put the pasta on here. And I'm just going to do pappardelle style, where I'm just doing the 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch strips. You can use if you have a knife, you don't have the roller, you can use a knife. Take these and put them onto my tray. Dust a little flour on there. That way they don't stick together. So we'll get these cut. Now what I'll do is with this is more pasta than what we can eat in one night. So I'll go ahead and just make the little piles on the tray. I'll take the whole tray and put that in the freezer, let it freeze, and then I take those bundles out and I put them into bags. And then if I want some pasta, one of my sons wants some pasta, he can heat up some water, go to the freezer, pull out the pasta, pull out however many bundles he wants, cook that off, and he's got a meal. So I'm going to go ahead and roll out the rest of the dough and then get it all cut up. And then the next step, we're going to show you we're going to cook it. Literally, it takes minutes to cook. And we'll also do a brown butter sauce. The meatballs are in the oven. We'll have the little broccoli and mushroom sauteed off with a brown butter sauce. Toss it all together, and it's going to be dinner. So the next step is we've got my pan heating up, and we're going to do a little brown butter here. So I've got the butter melting. We're actually going for the nutty brown, to a brown butter. You're getting the whey, the milk solids, and we're going to let those brown up in here. I blanched off my broccoli and the pasta water. That's why the water is green. And then I've got some sliced mushrooms. So I'm going to go ahead and if you look in the pan, you can see I'm getting little bits of brown in there. That's going to give it a nutty flavor. And then I've got my my blanched broccoli here. I'm going to add the mushrooms in first and let them start cooking. So just a little sliced cremini mushrooms here, which cremini mushrooms are just baby portobello mushrooms. So I've got those going. And I've got my fine sea salt here. I like to use the sea salt whenever I'm seasoning. And I'll add just a little bit into it and let that cook. All right. I've got that cooking on high. Say, what else am I going to add into here? Well, I've got a little chives. I'm going to use that for garnish. And I've got some green onions, the chives. It's the first thing that I'm able to get out of my garden, so I was able to cut those and chop them up. So I'll be adding that in as a garnish later. You can see the mushrooms are starting to get a little soft. Okay, and then we're going to add the broccoli in. It's always nice to have a heat-resistant spatula. That way you don't melt the end of the spatula. All right, so we're going to let the pasta, or let the vegetables cook here for just a second. And I've got my water heating up. So as soon as that gets to a rolling boil, I'm going to be able to add my pasta in here. While we're waiting on the water to heat up, the meatballs are ready to come out of the oven. So here are this is the beef meatballs right here. I'm going to put those on the back of the stove so they can stay warm. Still have heat coming up from the oven area. And then these are the Beyond Beef meatballs. So we're going to add those, or have those sit back here in the back and just stay warm while everything else is heating up. So our pasta water is boiling. So I'm going to take our little bunches of pasta and I'm going to put them all into here. And this is, I'm using half of the dough, roughly half of the dough that we made. I'm going to get all this into here. And literally it's going to take, it's got to come back to a boil. That's why I made sure it was at a rolling boil before we started. Now we're going to stir this up. I'm going to set a timer. About 3 minutes. We'll get this back up to a rolling boil. The nice thing about fresh pasta is when it's made fresh like this, it's not been frozen, it's going to take, say, 3 or 4 minutes. If I put it in the freezer and I pull it out of the freezer and put it in, then it'll take maybe 4 or 5. So you can see how everything's come back up to the surface now. The dog's in the background trying to get out the door, so my son's going to let him out. All right, he's outside, so we're a little canine free for right now. And actually, this has been cooking for just over a minute. And guess what? It's about done. So into a bowl, I have just a little bit of oil, a little bit of salt and pepper, and I'm going to take some of the water from in here, and I'm going to add it into my bowl. So that's actually, instead of a minute and a half. I'm going to let the pasta drain. See how it's draining there? This is home, so don't have all the PPE equipment that I have at work, but I do have a heavy towel that helped keep everything from getting too hot there. So now, I'm going to take my spatula, I'm going to mix this. I've got my pasta and my vegetables and the brown butter sauce, and I'm going to add those all in. We're going to mix this up. This is going into a bowl. I'm going to call the family and we're going to eat.